Okay, some tidbits we want to break out right now. Joining me is still on set is criminal defense attorney Philip Hamilton, and now joining us is criminal defense attorney Saman Nasseri. Saman, great to see you. I want to start with you. What do you make of this case so far? I mean, it does have a political nature in it. Why do you think the state brought these charges against Lou-Anna Simon?
I think they brought the charges because the case, one, had so much publicity, two, to clean up their own shop as well, to show that they're taking the case seriously, that they're taking the allegations seriously. I mean, Nassar had so many victims. And I think it's more to see who else was involved, because for something that's going on for this long and there was this much abuse happening, it couldn't have been done with just one person. I mean, yes, he did it, but everyone couldn't have just turned a blind eye to it. And I think right now, with all the pressure on all organizations in general to, clean up sexual misconduct and sexual harassment, I think they're trying to prove a point here. We're not going to stand for this.
Yeah, if the Larry Nassar sentencing hearings, which we covered, were a description of all of the events and all of the horrible, horrible accounts of sexual abuse, this is the question of a cover-up. And Philip, my question to you is, what we just saw, is a whole morning of testimony about what was communicated to Lou-Anna Simon and her involvement in this investigation. But the file folders, which were just discussed, is an interesting avenue, which you had mentioned before our last break. What do you make of what's being made right now?
They have to get this testimony in order prior to trial. The more that I'm kind of looking at this, the more that I'm thinking, more likely than not, it does move forward to trial. And so to the extent that it's ultimately going there, those file folders are such a critical piece of evidence, circumstantially, to kind of corroborate what Simon's train of thought was as all of this was going on, and what did she know. And to the extent that on May 16th, it was clear that, Ms. Granberry Russell had the information about the sexual assault allegations against Nassar, and then ultimately you had this meeting on May 19th. I mean, as a member of the jury, the common thinking would be that ultimately you would have had that conversation with Simon, who you were a former senior advisor to, on the 19th. But at this point, what Ms. Granberry Russell is saying is like, well, I don't remember ultimately whether or not that was on the agenda for the 19th. And, look, as the defense attorney, you're happy to get those answers. But interestingly, as a state's witness, you're almost kind of looking at your own witness in a hostile manner, because it's like, come on, you had that conversation with her on the 19th. This is like a very big matter, and you're going to sit up here and say that you didn't have the conversation, but it's your own witness. You're calling her to prove the case.
Saman, we've been having this back and forth about everything we've been seeing so far in this courtroom. Is this back and forth and these different interpretations enough for it to go past the preliminary stage and head towards trial, or can we just see the conclusion of this case as soon as this preliminary hearing's done? What do you think?
Absolutely. I mean, the threshold to get past probable cause in a preliminary hearing to get to the point of trial is very, very. The purpose of a preliminary hearing is for the district attorney to show some of their cards, the defense attorney to get their first, jabs at the witnesses, but they don't necessarily have to show their cards, and then take the case to trial. But it's very rare that a case gets kicked out of the preliminary hearing. This is more to set the tone of where the case is going to go from here. So it's very easy to get past the preliminary hearing from the district attorney's position and get to trial.
And what a tone it's been so far. We have a lot more to cover here on Law and Crime. We're going to jump back into this courtroom. And as you can see, we are also in verdict watch in the John Chuck case. As soon as we have an update, we're going to make sure to let you know. In the meantime, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back here on Law and Crime. Okay, so Saman, what it basically sounds like to me was a little bit of still cross and then redirect by the state, although it's kind of hard to see. They're both trying to get information out of her. But the idea of what was on those folders, right? Can you help clarify this? Is it really, can you show knowledge on the part of Simon if she was handed or saw a folder that had Larry Nassar's name on it? Is that knowledge?
It's knowledge that something exists. It's knowledge that there might be some evidence. What they're trying to clear up right now is whether or not she had independent knowledge that these actually happened, or she received these emails, they were handed to her, and when these meetings took place. And I think that's where the gray area is for this case, is what took place, what was said during these meetings, and what was communicated between the chain of command.
But if she didn't know about Larry Nassar, doesn't that at the very least show that possibly Michigan State University wasn't taking these kinds of complaints very seriously if the president didn't know about this?
Absolutely, absolutely. If she didn't know about Larry Nassar, it's a bad look for the university. It means, hundreds of complaints came forward, and none of them were, she's not taking them seriously. They never made it to her. That's a whole nother issue in and of itself. And it's a civil liability issue, not necessarily a criminal one. Criminal liability is much different, much harder to prove. But if they're saying that it never even made it to her, then everyone below that is going to be liable.
That's an interesting point. In other words, no matter what happens to Lou Anna Simon, at the very least, it casts the university and some of these top officials in a horrible light. And that's something that maybe also the state wanted to do at the very least by covering this and by having media outlets cover this. And we can try to see what's happening, what really happened at MSU, because there's one thing for sure. Larry Nassar should not have been going on for such a long time and had the ability to abuse so many women. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be live in Michigan. We don't want you to miss any moment of the Lou Anna Simon preliminary hearing. We'll be right back. All right, again, this is just the preliminary hearing stage to determine if there's enough evidence to go forward with a trial. Saman, let me ask you, what would a trial of Lou Anna Simon look like?
I think it will be, because don't forget, for a preliminary hearing, you can get in a lot of testimony that's necessarily, hearsay testimony through other witnesses. You don't have to lay as much of a foundation out for a lot of the evidence. So a trial will be much more dragged out, and you will have everybody that was involved in this chain of command, everyone that had any scope of knowledge with misconduct that could have reported to the president, that could have reported to Simon, could have reported to anybody. And it's going to be dragged out. It's going to be a tedious trial because anybody with any form of contact, even if it was just one email, should be called as a witness.
And absolutely, it's shedding a light on that university in all different ways. I want to thank Saman and Philip. Thank you so much for coming on. Appreciate both of you joining us and breaking down this really complex but interesting case. So thank you both.
Thanks for having us.
All right, everybody. So we are going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be live in Michigan. But as you see, we're also carefully monitoring the John Chuck case. We are in verdict watch in that trial. Will he be found guilty or not guilty by reason of insanity? We'll have to see. We'll be right back right after this.